Thank you very much, Marcus. Many of you who are here today know the speaker almost as well as I do, and he needs no introduction. For those few of you who may not know our speaker, I will share with you a few very brief remarks and then let him have the floor. He is a native of Morganton, Byrd County. He was educated in the Drexel and Morganton school system. He graduated from Berea, Kentucky, and then went on to law school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He has been a practicing lawyer in Morganton for many years, almost as long as I have, and I have had exposure to him as a lawyer, which I'll share with you in just a moment. I don't know very many people who have achieved more in his chosen profession than Bond Byrd has. He is now the senior partner in a law firm here in Morganton. If you look him up in Martindale Hubble, which is the place lawyers go to find out how other lawyers are rated, you would discover that he was rated A/B, which is the highest rating a lawyer can have. Not too long ago, as some of you may remember, the News Herald conducted a poll on who were the best people in various fields and professions and businesses in Byrd County, and not to my surprise or the surprise of anybody who knows him, he was chosen as the best lawyer in this area. I can testify he's not only the best lawyer, good lawyers we have in Byrd County, but one of the best lawyers in the state of North Carolina. He has achieved many things in his profession. I simply mentioned two of them. He's a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, and he was inducted into the North Carolina Bar Association General Practice Hall of Fame in 1993. Bob is married to the former Joyce Googe, and they have 3 children, 2 of whom live here in Morganton. In trying to think of something I might tell you about Bob that you do not know, these things occurred to me. First of all, he is one of the foremost growers of roses that I know, and he brought some evidence to support that statement today. He is also noted as a speaker and is sought as a master of ceremonies and as a speaker and as a raconteur. And you will enjoy, I'm sure, whatever he has to say. As I said, he is a good lawyer, and I know that because I tried a lot of cases against him. I lost most of them. I was never able to convince him that I was as much responsible for his financial success as I think I would be entitled to. He also is a person of tolerance. He practices law with 3 Ervins, and if you can do that, that is a remarkable accomplishment. The only low point in his legal career that I'm aware of, a number of years ago, he and I were on the same side, which was not very frequently the case, and we were appearing in a case in which our opponent was not a lawyer but was a lay person. We were representing someone who claimed that the defendant had assaulted her in connection with the rendition of professional duties as a dentist. And Bob and I were on the same side representing the plaintiff, the former dentist who no longer lives in these parts, represented himself, and I regret to report that he won the case. And Bob and I do not look back on that as any great accomplishment. But in any event, he did better than that, usually. Bob has been very active in his church, the Methodist Church. He's active in the civic community. He's active, as I said, in his profession and in politics. And you have a treat in getting to hear your friend and mine, Bond Byrd. Bob, we welcome you to Dress Reed.
Judge Ervin doesn't listen to my secretary, ladies and gentlemen, and I like to be introduced as just Bob Byrd, as you know, and that's what I hoped you'd say. That long, illustrious, and somewhat inaccurate introduction to me reminds me of the time that Clyde Huey was the governor of this state and United States Senator, and a great orator indeed. Your daddy would remember him well, Judge Ervin. He spoke to the Garden Club down in Raleigh, North Carolina, the statewide organization. They went through all these things that he had done. And at the last, they said, and ladies and gentlemen, his lady says, ladies, something you'd like to know. He's got the longest who's who in North Carolina, and it broke up the crowd. They never did quit laughing that day. Marcus, it's probably a mistake when you called me on the 6th of July, if my memory serves me correct, to come out here and speak, because if I make some slip of the tongue, it'll be on this tape, but I want you to forgive me up front. As the preacher was saying in prayer a while ago, we're all imperfect. Talking about mistakes, though, Judge Ervin has made a few in his life himself. And now, could you believe that? I mean, as a judge, and he's made some mistakes. I admit that mine, and the Supreme Court corrects his. That's the difference in it. But years ago, Lucy Baldwin, when they had custody cases, now they're separate courts, you understand. But in the olden days, the Superior Court judge tried all kinds of cases. And if you have a custody or a case in Burt County, the old courthouse in the olden days, and Judge Ervin and I practiced there, and there's some insinuation each side was kind of been tipping, throwing around amongst the tools for somebody else. It drew a big crowd. Big crowd. Prominent people from Burt County, and most time people go out of town when they want to get a lawyer, a foreigner out of town. Now, that's not what I call them when I'm out of town, but they had this tremendous divorce case, and believe it or not, the husband got the divorce on the grounds of infidelity and also got the custody of the children. In those old days, Sam, it was a miracle for the husband to ever get the custody of the children. I mean, that was almost impossible in olden days. Lawyer from Hickory, whom some of you may have heard of, used to wear a little boutonniere, colorful gentleman, white-haired, and a great orator. He came up here and he represented the lady. We lawyers always test each other out. Particularly when you lose, you test their mettle, Joe. And went out there on the corridor, and some of us said to Mr. John, Mr. John says, what did your client think about all this trial? It went on about 4 days. Well, he says, since you young lawyers are so inquisitive of my clients and my affairs, I'm going to tell you what she thought about this whole thing and put it in a rhyme to you. It goes like this. My husband got divorced this morning, I'm free again, I'm going to stay. But the strangest thing of all was that judge's decision gave all 4 of those youngsters to John, and 2 of them wasn't his. So even the judge could make a mistake, can't he? You know, the speaker is a remiss if he doesn't tell something about preachers, or you must always refer to the preacher or to a doctor or somebody else to throw the load off Marcus. You must do that as a lawyer. True statement to you. A preacher friend of mine went to Dallas, Texas to convention. That's where they have a lot of these conservative Baptist conventions down there. And I was down there not long ago, not at that, but at a wedding nearby. In the Gideon Bible, there was a little note. If you're lonesome, read the 23rd Psalm. He read it. And the note says, see next page. Turned over, says, if you're still lonesome, call 629-1800 to ask for Mary. So there's lots of things go on in this world. I tell you, one of the outstanding preachers in this county is Coach McIntosh. How many of you know Coach Clement McIntosh? Many of them know him. You know him back there, Dr. Derricks, I'm sure. He likes to speak in a small room. He wants it crowded. He wants a bunch around him so he feels like he is in control. They had a revival 2 or 3 years ago down in Mecklenburg County, near Monroe, but still in Mecklenburg. And they could use a great big church. It was a gathering of different churches to revival, not one religion. Or they could use a smaller rural church. He said, take the smaller church and get it full. Says, the Spirit of the Lord come on me better in a full house. Went down there, it's a murky afternoon, and humidity was high like it was here yesterday. And the room was full, church was full, no air conditioning. And he's preaching, and without meeting the beat, he said, open the doors and open them wide so my voice can be heard outside. Because he's about to burn up. You know how he wraps his face all the time. Somebody got tired of hearing all the noise and how long he talks, threw a little piece of paper or something up behind the pulpit there, and he hit the wall. He turned around. Without missing the beat, he says, close the doors and close them quick. Some son of a gun has thrown a brick. He can talk without thinking, I'll just tell you that. Talking about preachers, Grover, we Methodists, you know, we run off our preacher every 4 or 5 years, and sometimes ahead of time, don't we? You were blessed to stay a long time, and you ought to have a ribbon in your hat for that. By the way, I shot my friend Grover over here a few months ago. He's always dressed up Sunday morning at First United Methodist Church, and he greets the people and does a great job. I knew him many years ago, and he didn't know I knew much about him. But as a lawyer, you're supposed to know something about everybody. I try to find out something good about him. I want to forget the bad if I can. I walked in the church there, and he always says something funny to say to me. And I said, good morning, Toad. Well, he jerked like you'd hit him with a vaccination. His nickname as a boy was Toad, wasn't it? And I call him that every once in a while. But talking about changing Methodist preachers. I was raised to Lucy Ball down here on Drum Street after being born out in Carbon City, and then went on Byrd Road, and we lost the farm and went to Drum Street like the stars down there. I don't mean starved, but we weren't economically flush. And my mother always had the preacher every second and third Sunday after we changed preachers come for lunch. Did it all the time of my life. I mean, that was just tradition. And they said I was about 3 or 4 years old, too young for me to have any remembrance. And the preacher, well, mother was fixing the biscuits, and you already had the chicken, and we'd already caught the chickens that morning and wrung their heads off, they said, and everything was ready. Then he kind of rubbed me on the head and said to me, Sonny boy, says, do you know who I am? And apparently they say I replied, mother tells me this. I said, no sir, I don't know you. Well, says, I'm your new preacher's come to preach at your church, I am. And I responded, as a child would tell the truth. Well, says, Daddy says, since last Sunday, since the last preacher left, we ain't got no preacher at all. So you better not rub the child on the head and ask him something, but it might just tell you the truth about Gary. You know, talking about mistakes and so forth, you've got to always refer to a newspaper in the talk. If you want to, you got to sell something about a newspaper. You know, our dear friend Bill Petit resigned himself to the newspaper several weeks past, and I was honored to be the MC at his program. He used to put, as a young reporter, he came here, Carolina, raised in direction. Dad was a dear friend of mine, and he would put little ads in the ad section. A fellow came in there, about 35 years old, farmer out here about Oak Hill, and said he was looking for a bride. And he's a farm man. So Bill put this ad together, read as follows, quote, 35-year-old farmer is looking for a bride who has a tractor. Please send picture of tractor. Now, he's a real farmer, right? That's what he's saying. One of the lapses that happens to newspapers is setting the type sometimes. Beth Daniels, who's one of the outstanding pros, women pros, still is a professional golfer. I was down at Hilton Head, and I was chief counsel of Drexel, and she was the first one to ever play in the Pro-Am in the professional tournament down there. Playing great. Hit the ball on the green rather regularly. But the newspaper came out the next day, quote, at this point the gallery deserted the defending champion, Graham Marsh, to watch Miss Daniels, whose shorts, S-H-O-R-T, whose shorts were dropping in with astonishing regularity on every green. It's just one word, one slip, or one letter can change the whole meaning of something, can it not? Talking about newspapers, I want to share this with you, and I'm not a male chauvinist by any means. If I ever ran for political office, as Judge Ervin knew back when I was chairman of the party and preceded him, I'd had a woman campaign manager. That is for sure. You've heard me say that many times, Judge Ervin. You take a woman that's got some ability, they'll work. A man will talk and then won't do anything. I believe in doers. The good book says, one who hears the word and hears only, you know, by James 1:22. Anyway, I want to share with you a comparative analysis between a woman and a newspaper. Number one, they both have forms. Number 2, back numbers are not in demand. Number 3, they're well worth looking over. Number 4, they have a great deal of influence. Number 5, you can't believe all they say. Number 6, they're small demands with bold-faced type. Number 7, they always have the last word. And number 8, and last, every man should have one of his own and not go around borrowing his neighbors. That's a comparative analysis between the ladies and the newspapers. Judge Hatcher, how many knew Doggy Hatcher in the group? Now, he was a colorful individual if I've ever met one. Great football player down at Old Trinity College, which became Duke University. Any of you know how he got his nickname Doggy? Well, I'll tell you. It's documented. He was a great defensive lineman. The other team was about to score. It's 3rd down. They gave it to the big fullback on the other side, and he came through the line, and Doggy barely held on to him. He got his body by Doggy holding on to him, and he looked like he's going to score, and Doggy bit him in the calf of the leg. That's how he got the nickname Doggy. No foul, because nobody knew what happened. I mean, if the fellow was hurt and you going through there, he didn't realize it. That's what stopped him. But you know, he served the Senate, Judge Ervin, I guess, was he there before the war or after? After. He told me this story right after the Depression, or during the Depression. There's a great debate, as you know, down in the legislature about schools, as there is now every day, and whether or not we're going to have free textbooks in North Carolina. And there's a fellow from one of the rural mountain counties up in North Carolina that's been down there and hadn't said, as they say in the mountain lingo, nary a word the whole session. And he was making up the appropriations, as Judge Ervin knows, and he served in the Senate down there. That's the last thing. And they're going to have to put a crown tax. That's a tax on Coca-Colas and 7-Ups and so forth. And you can rest assured the crown tax people have been lobbying heavy against that, because that makes the price go up, makes them have less profit, charge the public more. This fellow raised, says, Mr. Speaker, says, I want to ask a question. Says, you're talking about all these school books and all these millions of dollars it costs. Says, we got these prisoners over here on Morgan Street. Well, I've got a suggestion that we just buy one copy of every kind of book that North Carolina's going to need, and take it over there to the prison, give them something to do, and make them copy. Well, somebody said, was the gentleman from Mitchell yield for a question? Yes, sir. Well, says, what about the copyright? He responded very adroitly, copyright, hell, stand over with a stick and make them copyright. A lot of things happen in the legislature down there. You know, talking about families and so forth, and this is a great family out here. 3rd grade, it's in the official report of the Mountain View School. They asked the kids in the school that day a question. Asked my son Dixon, who's the boss of the household? And they had to write down the answer. And the answer to this is what he wrote. My daddy's the boss, but my mother tells me what to do. Now that's telling exactly like it is, isn't it? You know, the chief of police, or the director of public safety, has a more sophisticated title now, Marcus, than it used to have. Morgan Williams, Chief Williams, who does a magnificent job in coordinating fire and police and many other activities. If you go up there one afternoon, or if you go on Friday or Saturday night to the police station, and just listen to the calls that come in, if you just listen, it's better than Groucho Marx. The lady called in and reported the disappearance of her husband. The nice operator up there asked us, now, is there any message? Said no. She called back later and said something else about her husband. And says, have you found him? Says, no, we haven't. But says, if you locate him, give him this message. Tell him that Mama didn't come after all. That's all it takes. I mean, who believes that? Talking about college experiences out at Berea College. My college roommate, my senior year, is a member of the Byrd County residency and a very outstanding individual, retired from several of the other correctional knitting mills some years ago, and a rather ingenious personality he is. We took Bible together, and Dr. R.J. Martin, the man that married Jordan, united us, tied the knots so tight I haven't been able, Houdini couldn't get out of my knot if I tried. We studied the New Testament. 50% of the test always was to trace Paul's journeys. They were the short answers to things, questions, and one was always this essay, trace Paul's journeys. Well, we done us a couple little boats, and we had the map over there, and we could put the ship anywhere and lay there and quiz each other. We could take the ship and let it go backwards or forward. We could trace Paul's journeys all over that part of the continent. So we go into the final exam. We knew to get 50% of it right. If I could get 20 more right, I passed. Dr. Martin came in after we had our short answers, and we all were ready to start tracing Paul's journeys. Had about 4 pieces of paper. We just talked about where he went, who he saw, and what kind of message he left at Antioch, and church at Corinth, and all that. He goes up there and puts on the board, discuss and criticize the Sermon on the Mount, 50 points. Well, I thought my heart, if any of you ever had a heart flutter, I had one that it was racing as fast as Jim Ryan could run when he was the great runner from Kansas. I knew it was in red letters in Mother's Bible, and I knew a little bit about it, but not enough to write 2 or 3 pages about it. My goodness, that's more than I could have thought up, real or imaginary. I wrote about 5 minutes, and I went outside. My roommate stayed the whole hour. And I knew we studied together. We hadn't even talked about Sermon on the Mount. I knew it was a miracle if he knew any more about it than I did, which was right at nothing. He came out and I said to him, friend, what in the world were you doing in there? You didn't know any more about the Sermon on the Mount than I did. He said, Bob, tell you the truth, if you knew anything, you knew more than I did. I said, what did you do? He said, I just started to do this. Said, I started off my paper. Some people can criticize the Sermon on the Mount if they want to, but I prefer to trace Paul's journeys, and he did, and he made an A in the class. Now that's ingenuity, isn't it? I mean, that's above average, folks. That's a whole lot smarter than I could ever thought of in all my life. I want to share with you an instance about a spoon. I thought of Judge Ervin, I saw this fine silver. John and Judy had just graduated from, Johnny graduated from Carolina, and Judy graduated from the great university, Durham, Duke University. And were upstarts and getting ready to go with their various life's work there in the Triad area. And John wrote a note to his mother that he would now not be such a financial burden to him. He's able to make some money, and he won't be thrifty and save like they had done, and that he and his girlfriend Judy had decided to share an apartment. And that would save them money. He learned in economics that 2 could live under one roof as cheap as one, except for their food and other things, and that's basically true. Maybe that's the reason my brother had so many children. I guess he's cut out on the expense per child. Anyway, his mother was invited on Friday night a week to have dinner over at Judy and John's place. And she went, and Judy had out her finest silver that her mother had given her, grandmother passed on to her. But mother fears she was somewhat concerned about this relationship, although John had assured her it was purely platonic, that they were there to save money and they were just buddies, and that's all, had 2 bedrooms, all was well. But during the evening, mothers have a keen insight, you know. You can't fool a mom. I mean, they can see the eyes back of their head. Notice the twinkle in the eye between them and little gestures here and there. And when she left that evening, her fears were not totally allayed that it was just as John had said. Nothing happened for a few days. Next day, when Judy and John were cleaning up the dishes, Judy noticed she was missing one of her fine spoons. Well, she sent John out the trash can to see if it had been inadvertently thrown out. He didn't have a disposal. And he looked and couldn't find it. Well, nothing occurred that day. A couple of days later, Judy was upset about losing a piece of silver. Says, John, you reckon by chance your mother might have taken one of our spoons? Well, that made, of course, John mad. Why, he says, you know she would. Well, they gave the fuss, and he finally said that he'd write his mother a note about it. This is what he wrote, quote, Dear Mother, Judy and I enjoyed having you for dinner last Friday night. Now, I'm not saying that you took the silver spoon, nor I'm not saying that you didn't take the silver spoon. But the fact is that Judy's silver spoon has been missing since that night when you were here on Friday night. Do you know anything about the spoon? Love, John. Mother got that letter, and she's rather cute, I thought. She wrote back, "My dear son, John, Judy is such a lovely person, and I enjoyed the dinner last evening immensely at your apartment. Now, I'm not saying that you and Judy are sleeping together, and I'm not saying you and Judy are not sleeping together. But the fact remains that Judy were sleeping in her own bed, as you indicated she did each night, she would have found her silver spoon 5 days ago." You know, Judge Ervin was the Superior Court judge, and he did a magnificent job as a trial judge, one of the prominent, formidable trial judges in this state. He was always careful to give the instructions to the jury to protect the rights of defendants, which I've always appreciated. The public has too. You always gave the instructions so the jury could have a full picture about what was reasonable doubt and those kinds of things. I remember one case, though, where a judge instructed the jury about every man presumed innocent, you've got to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt, circumstantial evidence can be used, but it's not binding. He had it memorized. During the break while the jury's out, the defendant asked Judge Ervin, said, "Judge Ervin, can I ask you something?" Yes, my good man, go right ahead." Says, "You said under the laws of America, I'm presumed to be innocent." The judge said, "That's right." Well, he said, "I want to ask you this. Why in the world all this clamor for 4 days to try to convict me?" He couldn't understand that. He just thought maybe the judge would tell him that it'd all go away. They didn't. Tell this on Judge Ervin and me both. Fellow, I was cross-examining a man one time, and the judge said, and he didn't seem to want to answer. He wouldn't answer, and you get a fellow boxed in the trail where he's got to either jump off the cliff or admit something. Either option's not too good sometimes, is it? Judge said to him, says, "Why don't you respond to that question? Why don't you answer that question? Do it." The fellow responded, "Well, Judge, tell you the truth. Well, I've been sworn to tell the truth, and every time I try to, Bob Byrd objects, and you sustain it." We've had some times in court that Judge Ervin would tell you. I want to tell you this other thing on Judge Ervin. I'm not trying to wear you out, Judge. I'm just trying to let some of these people that don't know you as well as I do get a better feeling about you and your life's work. My brother Joe was in the Senate in '65, and Judge Ervin was in the House. They were down there working, and they really both worked hard. There was that time, women's lib was just catching on a little bit in North Carolina, Nancy. It hadn't got here yet. It was just a seed, kind of like one of those sprigs by roses. It hadn't flowered yet. And there's some committee meeting down there, and some of the bill was complicated and all, and for reasons probably correct on the basis why Judge Ervin in the committee didn't vote to send this bill out favorably. A lady came up, they tell me they're at the new legislature, your new legislature bill at that time, out there in that beautiful stone place with the flag and all that, says, "Mr. Ervin," says, "I want to tell you something." Says, "I voted for you and your daddy and your granddaddy many times, but says, I will never vote for you again, period. Even if you were Jesus Christ or St. Peter himself." Judge Ervin pretty quick. He says, "Thank you, ma'am, thank you, ma'am." Says, "That's no problem with me, because if I were St. Peter, you couldn't vote for me because you may not be in my district." I thought that was a great response. But says, "Thank you, just some thing." He thanked him very graciously. 1999 has been declared as the International Year, as you know, of older persons. And I'm one of the older persons. I'll be 70 next year. Some mornings I feel like I'm 102, if anybody knows how that feels. The graying of America has really come upon us since the Second World War. Medical science great institutions like this has kept all of us healthy and viable and alive and worthwhile many more years than our ancestors. By 2030, I'm told that a third of the population of the United States will be over 65 years of age. A third. Now that's incredible for me to think of, but it's going to happen. Growing older, I don't like to say we're growing old, we're just growing a little older. You know, if we weren't getting older, we wouldn't be here. So I won't mind how many years I can stay around as long as I've got my mind and health enough to enjoy it. I look around in this audience and I know so many of you, and the fine contributions that each of you are making to this community out here and to Morgan and to society in general. I've found that some of the people who are retired, that are not in a fretful mood, that have time to think and work on committees and come up with ideas, is much superior to the people in their 35, 40, 50 years of age who are in a hectic life and just have to do it with a dart. I'm proud of this mountain house as it started by Dr. Ervin, and how she pulled off that loan from Bank of Boston. They ever loaned all the money to build this is beyond me. But she did. How this place has improved since that day. It's one of the most magnificent retirement villages. It's not a retirement home. This is a village, a community out here. I don't know how many people live out here. I trust Marcus several hundred now, 200, and that's a community. And the homes are building down here. This dining room reminds me almost exclusively of Melrose Country Club. It's on across from Hilton Head, out there on the island. The dining room is just beautiful here and down there. These years that you're sharing with each other, the talents that you're sharing with each other, is part of life's trip. Life is just a voyage. I've already gone like the salmon, I'm almost back to the river where I started. But it's as natural as living, breathing, to go through our echelons of life, of courtship, of marriage, of children, retirement, getting older, and then going on to meet our maker. Quality, many of us, I hope, will have many years of quality life associated with one another, and being friends with one another, and sharing with one another. And you have such a nice place to do it. I won't dwell about the details of this fine institution. Miss Phillips and Nancy here, who knows all about it, I know a little bit about it. By the way, I did read that 1999 offering y'all have to send in. So what's not that wide, is it? I read kind of like the $64 question. I read the 64 pages and quit. But that's the meat of it. The first part tells the history of this institution. All of us have egos, as you know. It's just as natural as breathing. If you don't have some egotism in you, you get run over by someone else. But none of us are indispensable. All the people have gone on. Senator Ervin has gone on. Dwight Eisenhower, Kennedy's. We think of people that when they're in prime, that they would just sustain themselves and go on forever. But that's just not the way the Lord made us. Sometimes when your ego is running away with you, you think you're totally indispensable. That Byrd County and this fine home here or society can't do without me. I want to read a little poem to you that's by an author unknown that would kind of put us all, Marcus, back into our place and how we really are in this massive world in which we all live. It's called The Indispensable Man. Sometimes when you're feeling important, sometimes when your ego is in bloom, sometimes when you take it for granted you're the best qualified in the room. Sometimes when you feel that you're going, will leave an unfillable hole. Just follow these simple instructions and see how it will humble your soul. Take a bucket, fill it with water. Put your hands in up to your wrist. Pull it out. The hole that remains is a measure of how you will be fixed. You can splash all you wish when you enter. You may stir up the water galore. But stop and you'll find that in no time it looks quite the same as before. The moral of this quaint example is just do the best that you can. Be proud of yourself, but remember, there's no indispensable man. I want to close my few comments to you this afternoon. I thank you for inviting me out here because it's a pleasure to come out here. The sun even came out when this meeting started. I've been drafted 5 days. I haven't cleaned up a swimming pool since last Sunday. How many of you knew Judge T. Earl Franklin? Oh yes, you knew him, Gary. Many of you. Colorful individual. A great judge without training. That shows you can be a good judge. I don't hurt your feelings without going to law school. Your senior partner, Frank Patton, is one recommended the county commission. Judge Franklin became the Kirk County judge over some lawyers. And he did a great job. When my brother and I started practicing law, we had an office in the Mimosa Theater building right next to Judge Franklin. Joe had an office, and I had an office. Our reception room was the hall with 5 chairs in it. We didn't have a secretary. Vernon Davis built that building. He sure didn't put any insulation between the walls and those 4 little offices upstairs. You could just hear each other talking. There was no confidentiality in the law practice up there. But Judge Franklin did a magnificent job in marrying people. And many people, particularly up in Avery County and Mitchell County, would come down here on Saturdays to get married with Judge Franklin. He had a $15 wedding, he had a $25 wedding, and his Rolls Royce was a $35 wedding. Whatever you want. And I witnessed, if you go look in the register of deeds, I guess I've witnessed more weddings there in the late 50s and 60s than anybody in Byrd County, because I'd work on Saturday to try to make some bread money for Saturday night. One Saturday, about 12:35, Judge Fry heard some people in there, heard a little loud talking, couldn't hear exactly what they said. He walked in there with a cigar and says, Bob says, tell these people that after 12:30, says the register of deeds is closed and Mr. Ervin III can't issue a license. Well, I didn't know if that's a law or not. It happened to be the local law that he couldn't issue a marriage license after 12:30 even if he's in his office against the law. I said, yeah, I'm a lawyer. That's right, Judge, that's right. And this young fellow standing there, soldier boy, he kind of looked kind of down and he went around. And I went on back to my work. In about 20 minutes, I heard Judge Franklin say, John, do you take Mary to be your lovely bride and wife till death you shall part? And all those magic words he had together, and vice versa he did with that. And he didn't call me in there to witness it, that which was unusual. I heard the steps creak as he went down. I just stepped out in the hall and looked down. I got a glimpse. It looked like a fellow in an army uniform just going out that door. I said, Judge, surely you didn't marry those people without a license, did you? He said, oh, no. Well, I says, he sure sounded like you did. He said, Bob, I'll tell you what. Says, this young fellow's just finishing basic training down at Fort Jackson, been up on Tank Hill. He's home for the weekend. They plan to get married. He's got to be back down there at 600 hours Monday morning. And says, I just said a few words over and to tide him over the weekend. So I just said a few words to tide you over to the next weekend. Thank you very much for having me. Goodbye.
Thank you, Bob. We'll remember that one for a long time. Next part of our program is administrator management topics. Beverly Phillips or